you got to go back because, so this will ruffle feathers. All the Cheyenne lovers out there. Piper did a lot of great things, have a lot of great products, but the Cheyenne II isn't one of them because it's actually, the Cheyenne II is actually the Cheyenne I, right? A lot of people don't understand that. So Piper came out, they took a Chieftain, and I guess they took it, pretty sure they took it straight down to the road from Vero Beach down to La Presti and had them said, hey, make a turbine out of this. So they made a turbine out of it, and they're 620 horses side, which makes them really pitch unstable. And if you look at like the accident reports and things like that on them, that's the very first problem they started having with them was was accidents due to loss of pitch control. This is also borne out. I mean, they've got the SAS system on them, which is a stability augmentation system, and it really doesn't work. It's just supposed to pull the nose down for you and things. But of course, all that crap is old. Probably worked okay when it was new, but all this crap in these airplanes is old now. And this one was like a 78 model, and that's the closest I think I've come to dying in an airplane. It really scared me, and it was obviously late in my flying career. It was about, I don't know, around 10 years ago. And but I've been flying the airplane for several years, and you know, you can point this, well, it's a lack of maintenance and things like that. Look, as I said a minute ago, they're all old. So, you know, the owners on these airplanes, is a friend of mine, they were doing everything they could to keep the airplane in the air and doing anything that I asked them to do. And, you know, the autopilots, there's one box in like Lincoln, Nebraska that can be shipped around the entire country to get the autopilot diagnosed. And then you got to have a guy behind that knows what they're doing. And we'd spent a lot of money on it trying to get it fixed to no avail. But to set the deal up, so I was leaving Lubbock, going down to San Antonio. I mean, it was great here in Lubbock, but down in San Antonio, it was 400 overcast, 3 or 4 miles in rain and mist. So, you know, I mean, there was no thunderstorms. There was no convection. It was just, you know, just bad weather, low visibility and rain, not pouring rain, just, you know, just rain. So I went bebopping down there, and this is when, you know, that chain of events thing starts taking place. And I mean, I made my share of mistakes, and then whenever that is added on top of the problems with the airplane, it can become deadly. And so I went cruising into there, and kind of my interpretation of it was that I had a new controller on, because it seems like the supervisor kept coming on and helping her out and getting things, you know, unscrambled. And so you had a controller that apparently wasn't very experienced, and then here comes LaRosa bebopping into there. So, but she asked me to get down and slow down at the same time. And in a turbine, you can do that, but I didn't. I just basically descended and maintained the speed. So there was the first mistake that I made was, you know, I screwed up her gapping. So went in there, I got on the approach. She got me on the approach. I got to the FAF, gear down, flaps down, started down, and got in there. I don't remember how low I was. I was probably down to 1,500 feet or so on the approach, and the supervisor came on and said, hey, I need you to go around. And I was like, oh, crap. You know, I mean, that's the last thing you want to hear. And, you know, and it's raining. You can't hardly see the wingtips on this thing. I mean, it's getting with it. So I went full power, hit the go around button, pitched up, got it climbing out, re-engaged the autopilot, and then the controller came on and gave me a 180-degree turn, basically back the other direction. It wasn't quite 180, but he turned me all the way around to send me back, to send me out to go get it again. And so I spun the heading bug around, and the airplane initiated its climb. And then the next mistake that I made was that I looked at my iPad to say, okay, where's this cat sending me, and what do I need to do to get set up for this? And I should have known. I mean, you can't turn your back on a Cheyenne II, especially you really don't need to do that with any airplane. You should be paying attention to what it's doing. You can't just assume the autopilot's going to do it. But what it did was it rolled into a turn, which caused it a steeper turn, which caused it to start descending, which caused the autopilot to start trimming the nose up because it's thinking, I need to get up, I need to go up. And so what it's doing is, if you've flown aerobatics in here, I mean, from here, all you're doing is tightening. You're tightening, and the nose is going to go to the ground. So the first thing I noticed was that crappy little jicky Piper trim wheel. You know, a King Air's got a giant chunk of metal right here to trim the airplane with. That crappy jicky trim wheel's running. I'm like, what the heck is this thing doing? And then I realized, I looked up, and it had trimmed it around. Remember, I'm IMC. It had just, in just a few seconds, it had trimmed it around like this, where it was headed down. And I looked, and it was headed almost to the barber pole, just that quick. It all happened. Thank goodness, you know, I'd taken quite a bit of aerobatic training from Scott Lane, Mr. SFL. So, you know, the quickest way out of this is to roll level, not pull, because you're just pulling it to the ground. And remember, I'm not very high anyway, and I'm IMC. So I clicked the autopilot off and immediately rolled it level so that I could initiate a recovery. Well, it had trimmed the nose completely up. And remember, this officer said this thing is real pitch unstable. They're not stable at all. So it shoved the control yoke back into my chest. And then it just went for the stars. And I'll never forget, it just scared me to death. So now I've got like 1,240 horsepower in an airplane with just me in it, and we're headed up. So I know what it's going to do. It's going to start for a loop because it's trimmed that way. It's trimmed to loop, and you know, I'm IMC. Well, I'm trimming on that, trying to shove forward, and trimming on that crappy trim wheel that Piper put in there. And then I realized I got to get the power out of this thing. So I reached up and pulled the power to about a quarter. And that let me start really pushing forward on it. And it got to a point and it stalled and it just fell straight forward. I'm still IMC and I'm still trimming on this piece of crap wheel. And I got it level, added half the power back in just to try to fly straight forward and get the airplane stable. I think I'm a couple thousand feet over the assigned altitude that the guy gave me. And I remember the radio got dead quiet. I think it scared the controllers absolutely to death. Because basically I'm on the approach, I do this and then come out and straight up, stalled, fell forward, and then flew away. And I remember she came on and she said, I need you at, I believe they gave me 5,000 there. She said, I need you at 5,000. I said, negative. I said, this is what I've got, and I just need to sort this out and fly the airplane. She's like, okay. And you know, I don't know, a couple minutes later, I called her up and said, hey, I'm ready. Let's get me back. And I got on the approach, and it was uneventful, but King Air just is not going to do that to you. And I've got some more stories about that airplane, and I eventually just, she went to the scrap heap before it was over, but that's the Cheyenne II, the scariest story that I've got in a Cheyenne II.